Hola todo el mundo. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And well, thanks as well for the later presenters that made a wonderful introduction to marvelous work of the network. So it is a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to present a topic I'm very passionate about, a piece of research that I've been working on the last years. And it's called Invisible Threats and the Role of Informal Networks in Disasters. My name is Rocío Carrero, and I come from University College London. Please feel free to make any question or to raise your hand at any point. So, what happens when a disaster strikes? Well, I think that we all know that there's one side that it's the official side with the government, the civil protection forces, emergency forces, the military that work, straight away into the disaster, into the emergency, and try to work as efficient as possible. But there is another side. Whatever a disaster happens, we have people. Affected people, organize themselves to cope with a disaster. No matter when, no matter where, we always find people trying to do their best. And you would say, well, we know that. These systems are there. The problem with human networks is that despite we know that they play a very important role, we don't see them. We cannot measure them. They are kind of invisible, they are ephemeral, they appear and change and evolve. And this is something that has always fascinated me, and also more people in the team. And we try to understand the differences between these two systems. So, in theory, right, we have the formal systems, just in theory, that are organized. You have different levels. You have a hierarchy. You have different responsibilities, and you have commands. Everything is clear. And then you have the informal systems where everything is chaotic and there is no clear order, there are no responsibilities, it's very dynamic. And well, it's very ephemeral. The connections, as you can see there, are not institutional. They just exist on a basis of a human contact, but they cannot be tracked because they are not institutional. So this is the main question around our research, to generate evidence on the role of informal networks in disasters. How they operate. Can we see them? Can we track them? To which extent they are important and for which phases? Well, so we took 3 pilot sites. We selected Kathmandu, Nepal, with Gorkha earthquake in 2015 to understand better the informal networks in response. Then we went to Sendai, Japan, with the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami to track the work of informal networks on disaster recovery. And then, very recently, we were lucky enough to go to the Philippines, visiting some colleagues here, to understand the work of these networks on disaster preparedness and between disasters. What we found out, and this is just preliminary conclusions we are showing today, is that just after the disaster, the informal networks create a very complex universe in a very, very fast way. So here, this is kind of a radiography of the informal network activated in Kathmandu Valley just after Gorkha earthquake. Each of these stars, the spots, are either households or organizations. So we try to measure and to track the connections, the informal connections after the earthquake. And this is what we saw. This is the informal network activated after the earthquake. We realized that we have over 700 connections. Each of them is either access to food, water, shelter, electricity, papers, everything. And this is just fascinating. We just started to try to understand better how this happened. The second thing we found out is that informal networks cover all kinds of human needs. It's not just that people organize themselves to rescue others. People get, it's like an artificial intelligence system. The informal networks detect the needs in the population. And people organize themselves from things that go in the beginning to rescue and water and shelter provision, to food distribution and even electricity access, house reconstruction, legal support, psychological support, you name it. We mapped more than 12 different needs that were perfectly covered by these human networks. We also saw that these networks provide critical support where others can't. So here again in Kathmandu, we can see that international NGOs and government, the big green circles, provided a lot of support to the households, which are the yellow spots. However, on the right of the picture, and maybe you cannot read, but I can tell you, on the right, we have all the informal groups. We have neighbors, we have friends, we have families, and they reach a lot of communities that on the right were isolated for geographical reasons, for ethnical reasons, and they could only access to help by these informal networks. Then during the recovery in Sendai, we found that informal networks specialize according to these needs. So we find that people will target specific groups. So they would attend children, women, elderly. They, after a few weeks, they all kind of evolve and target the group that needs help the most. And also by activity, they really find quite quickly what is more necessary in the area, and they create a specific pseudo-professional teams to focus in one activity. We also saw that they adapt and evolve all the time, and this is fascinating. Why? So, because this is a diagram based on Sendai. After a disaster strikes, immediately you have a lot of these informal networks, a lot of organizations, a lot of mobilizations. It grows exponentially till it reaches a peak. Why? Because when people start the needs are lesser once everyone is in shelter, and the number of networks start to decrease slowly during the long-term response, and then they disappear. Many of them because they don't need to cover the need. They don't have a purpose, and they are not there anymore. However, what can you see at the end of the line? Can you notice something at the end of the recovery phase in comparison with the beginning? Anyone? Well, we have seen and we are proving that there at the end you have more networks than you have at the beginning. That means a net positive increment in social capital. That means that disasters, as bad as they can be, they can provide an opportunity as well to create new local social capital, long-lasting one, which is very, very important. Then between disasters in the Philippines, we found something that you all know, I'm sure, that sometimes informal networks are, in fact, the only network. And this is the case of Payatas, where we were lucky to work in Quezon City, Manila. Payatas is not only an informal place in terms of construction, it's informal in terms of the economy, it's informal in terms of the social relations, everything is informal. So when you work in disaster risk reduction or preparedness with these communities, it's not that you have to pay attention to the informal networks, it's that you have to work with them because there is no other way. There's no other channels to reach them. So, coming back to the original question, what is the role of informal networks based on the evidence and the cases that we covered so far in these 2 years? Well, we can say it is crucial in all disaster phases, response, recovery, and preparedness. in all the cases we cover. It doesn't matter the degree of development of the country. We selected countries that are in the opposite extremes. Japan is very different from Nepal. Nepal is very different from the Philippines. Informal networks were fundamental everywhere. So it's not related to the level of infrastructure or other kind of systems that the country has in place. Now the question is, what would happen if we stop thinking in these top-down versus bottom-up approaches, in these sectoral approaches, segmented approaches, and we try to work with the whole network in disaster risk reduction? Because these invisible networks actually can be visible. And if we work with them, maybe we can reach the whole community in a much more powerful way. Thank you so much. Thank you. Also, please, if you have interest, please feel very welcome to check our research, ongoing research on the website, or to contact me. I will be here till tomorrow. And also, if you want to have a chat about examples from your own work or country, I would be delighted, because this is a pilot research, experimental, funded by the University College London, supported by many people, but it is just the beginning of something that we expect to be bigger and more relevant. Thank you.